Okay, welcome back. We're doing this event handler. You guys remember how all event handlers work here. I'm going to have to do a mean override. And we're going to override public void handle. And the handle is going to have to be past the action event guy. Okay. So now it's time for us to actually do the animation, which is what this whole thing was about. So in the book, they talk about how you can do lots of translations. There's a translate transition. Boy, I'm gonna have a tough time saying that. And so you can do scaling, make it go bigger. You can do all sorts of stuff. I'm just going to use one of them, and I'm going to do the translate one. The translate transition, which basically allows things to move. Okay, that's it. But once you've learned one of these guys, well then, you know, come on, they're all about the same, right? I mean, okay, so this is a little tedious, and it's just a little, well, it's tedious. So I'm going to go ahead and type this stuff, and I'll explain what it is I'm doing. So I need a translate transition. I'm never going to translate transition. You think I'm going to be able to? Well, I think I look at it. So TT is equal to new translate transition. You think I spelled it right 2 times in a row? That's amazing. So I'm going to do a thing called a duration, and then I'm going to tell it that how many milliseconds I want this thing to run. So I'm going to pick 3,000 milliseconds, which is 3,000 milliseconds is 3 seconds. So this translation is going to happen over a period of 3 seconds in time. Okay, cool. And then what it is that I'm moving? Well, I'm moving C1, the circle 1 guy. Okay, and now I need to go ahead and get all the imports to behave. All right, so I need to add an import for that. I need to have an import for, oh, this is the interesting one. You got to make sure you get, because there's 2 things called duration. You got to make sure you're getting the Java FX version of duration. I know it's a little confusing. If you weren't paying attention and you, particularly if you had another duration someplace on here. Anyway, I'm just telling you there's 2 different kinds of durations, and it could be annoying. Okay, so what am I going to do here? Well, I'm going to tell, I want to move it over by. Well, you can do this with absolute positioning. That's one way of doing it. Or I can just say I want to move it over by whatever it is. So I'm going to do a set by set by X. And let's move it over 100 position. Which means whatever position it's in, I don't have to remember where it is. Whatever position it's in, just move it over from that position 100 more than whatever it currently is. Okay, that kind of makes sense. And just for us, I'm going to have it repeat. So I'm going to do a set cycle count. Let's go do it 4 times, just for the heck of it. And then when it's done, I want to reverse. So ours is going to just, so it's one called auto reverse, and I'm going to tell it true. Okay. So, and then last, I'm going to tell it it's time to do it. So we're going to play the guy. All right, so let me just go through what I just did. So the translate transition just takes something, a 2-dimensional object, and moves it wherever you want to move it. That's all it does. And I'm going to tell it that I want to move it over 100 spaces. I want to tell it that it's going to take 3 seconds to accomplish that task. I want to do it 4 times, back and forth, and then auto reverse, which means it goes there and then goes back, and goes there and then goes back. So, cool. All right, let's see how this thing works. So, let's run this guy. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be able to sell this as a cartoon or something. I mean, woo! Okay, and so it's going to do that 4 times, and then it's going to stop. All right, in fact, I think I've seen enough. Okay, so again, I'm not going to go through every single one of the types of animations, because they all basically are the same. It's like the cycle count and the auto reverse and the play. You know, so if it's the one that changes the scale, it's going to ask you what the scale is, right? Come on, it's all about the same. Okay, so the set from X is like using the absolute coordinate system. The set to X is you know, where it's from, and you know, here's where it is, and here's where I want it to be. Or you can use the set by, which is to me so much easier. Okay, so let's go to skipping on, since we're, you know, all those animations are roughly the same. On page 958, they talk about effects, and so the first effects they talk about is a drop shadow. Okay, so I'm going to do a drop shadow, and then I'm going to put it on the circle. Okay, and let's just see what it looks like. So I'm going to go here where our circle, well, I guess it doesn't matter. I'll go down to here someplace. And so I'm going to call this thing, I'm going to create me a drop shadow. Oh, DS is equal to new drop shadow. Okay, cool. And of course, it's never heard of this before in its entire life. Okay, cool. And then I'm going to apply that thing to circle 1. So I'm going to say circle 1, set effects. And my effect is going to be drop shadow. Let's just see what this thing looks like when you have a drop shadow. To tell you the truth, it doesn't do what I would expect it to do, because in all the other scenarios, this little grayed out thing was not symmetrical. In other words, it doesn't show at the top and the bottom and the left and the right, because to me that's not what a drop shadow is. A drop shadow is like an imaginary light source up here at 0, 0, and therefore to provide depth, it would only be on the bottom and on the right. Okay, that's just me. That's the way I do it. So we're going to make some tweaks to that. So I'm going to go here to DS, and I'm going to tell it that I want to do the offset X to be 10, and then DS set offset Y to be 10. This will give it like the strength of the drop shadow, and it'll tell it that it really only ought to go the place where it kind of makes sense to me. Maybe it doesn't make sense to you guys, but it makes sense to me that a drop shadow would be like over a bit. Okay, I didn't get it at the bottom though, did it? Oh, that's because I typed the same thing twice. Helps if you spell things correctly. It makes it work so much better. Okay, so this drop shadow is a little bit stronger, and then it's shadowed only in the spot where I think drop shadows should go. But again, I guess that's personal opinion. Okay, so that's all there is to know about drop shadow. It's, again, there's lots of other effects. I mean, there's a gazillion of these things. But to tell you the truth, oh, let me just tell you. Let's say I want to put a drop shadow on a label, okay? Well, that's not exactly what you want to do, because the label is basically a small container that has text in it. So if you were to put a drop shadow on a label, it's going to drop shadow the square thing. It's not going to drop shadow the actual text. But remember the shapes we talked about at the very beginning? One of the shape types that we did not demo is called text. And so that you apply a drop shadow to, and you get some really cool drop shadow effects on the text. But you can't like do it inside of like a button or inside a label, right? Okay, cool. So I'm going to skip a bunch of these effects, because once again, once you've learned one of these, it's kind of like, okay, I got it. I mean, you develop the effect, whatever it is you want to do, and then you use the set effect method to attach that effect to whatever control you're trying to do. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about is playing sounds, because I want to click on something and have it play me a sound. Okay, now before we start, this has got some very strange things to it. I mean, this is really strange, so pray up and pay attention. I'm getting ready to use what's called the media and the media player classes, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and start this guy up. I need another button to kind of do this thing with, so I'm going to create me another button here, because I don't want the thing to just blare out every time I launch the application. So this is going to be button 2 is equal to new button play sounds. Okay, hey, right off the bat, since this container, the pane container, doesn't have any layout whatsoever, to happen? I mean, let's just run this thing. So where's button 2 going to be? Where is it going to be? Well, actually, it's actually going to be nowhere because I forgot to put it in the, forgot to put it in the pane. After I put it in the pane, where is it going to be? Okay, let's try that again. The answer is it's going to be smack dab on top of that guy. Because remember, pane doesn't provide any layout whatsoever. So it's just going to go, so I can't even get to the other guy. So I'm going to manually space this guy out a bit, okay? Because in order to be able to see these guys, I really need to be able to, so I'm going to go in there and say, set a layout Y. So here we go. I'm going to say button 2, set layout in the Y direction, and I'm going to use 25 pixels to do that. Okay, so now I'm going to do this, and I actually ought to be able to see both buttons now. Yay! I got the animate button and the play sounds button. Of course, I don't have an event handler for that guy yet, so it's not actually going to do anything. So let's go ahead and get started with an event handler. Hey, just to speed things up, I'm just going to copy and paste this guy. You know, as a starting point. I mean, it just speed things up a little bit, maybe. Okay, so this time it's going to be B2. For my event handler guy. And I don't want any of this, so I'm just going to whack that. Okay, so I've got my event handler built. Yay! Okay, cool. Now, back to the story about the media and the media player guy. This is a kind of odd. I'm just going to go ahead and do it, and then it's going to fail, and then we'll talk about why it failed. All right. So first of all, I need a file. So I'm just going to call file F1, and I'm going to point to a particular file that I have on my machine. So this is going to be new file, and I know I happen to have something out there, and this is going to be users, whoops, name it gray, desktop, and then I have something called effect.wave. Okay, cool. So I actually have a file out there on my desktop, which is a sound file. Okay, so far so good. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and build me a media player because that's what the book says to do. So I'm going to say media M1, you know, I haven't used M yet, have I? No, okay, not. Is equal to new media, and I want the file one. This part is a little funky, so just bear with me. The mechanics of it aren't really all that. This thing expects what's basically a URL, all right? This is not really expecting a path to a file necessarily on your machine. It could be like an internet resource. So what you do is you do F1, and then you say to URI, and then I have to turn right around and do a to string to it. I know, it's goofy as hell. All right, so now I have this. So normally what we would do here is we would go here and we'd right click on this guy, and it would say, okay, well, we need to fix the problem here by doing an import. And yet, whoa, create a class with a constructor? What the heck? How come I don't get the normal thing where I go, let's just add this with an import? To tell you the truth, I really think this is probably a bug in the Maven setup here. I'm just saying, I don't really know what it is, but we're going to have to manually add a module to our application, something that we have never done before. And of course, it's time for the 15-minute mark.